if you're considering buying an affiliate, if you're in the middle of buying an affiliate, or maybe you're thinking about it down the road, right?
Or you just bought one.
Or you just bought one. It's not too late. You're going to want to listen to this episode. Here's why.
Well, because we're going to show you how to not screw it up.
Does your gym take programming seriously? Do your members take progress tracking seriously? TeamBuilder works with performance coaches from CrossFit to the NFL to bring an elevated experience when it comes to program design, tracking, and reporting. Take a free 14-day trial and get complimentary CrossFit programming by using promo code BESTHOUR.
Welcome back.
That's not how this works.
Jesus.
That's Jesus Christ.
What
It's
just happened?
first.
Claps first.
How do you know how any of this works?
Cut.
You can't cut if there's no clap.
Edit this.
This is the official opening.
Were you
show.
real? Do it again.
That was it.
No, he wants to do it. Look, he got his hands out of his pocket.
No, I can ready.
Again? You
Yeah,
sure?
the real one.
Yeah. Welcome to the Best Hour of Their Day podcast with your hosts, Jason Fernandez.
And me, Jason Ackerman. With more than 20 years in the business,
As both coaches and affiliate owners,
our passion is to help create world-class affiliates.
and coaches by building
Better
boxes.
Welcome to.
The best hour of your day.
Welcome back to the best hour of their day. We're here at CrossFit Citrine. Shout out to Anasan for opening up the doors, as well as Billy. We're here at CrossFit Games Week. We're right outside of where the games will be going down in Madison, Wisconsin. And we're excited to be here. Do you guys know what Citrine means?
It means the light maker. It's basically me. Brings joy, optimism, and is
Synonymous
uplifting. Is
with-
basically what citrine is, a gem.
Glassy yellow variety of quartz. Technical definition. I know this.
Because it's written up on the wall over there.
Don't give it away.
It is
I
on the
memorized
wall.
that. That was from grade school. I remembered that.
I like this. Beautiful, boutique-ish box.
It's awesome.
Clean, branded well, nice bright yellow.
Good vibes.
No, this is a good-looking gem, as far as gems go. Good, as far as like, it's pleasing to the eyes.
Easy on the eyes.
What percentage of
Kinda like
boxes? Yeah. What percentage of boxes do you think these days are like in? This is like a strip mall, right?
This is in fact a strip mall. Yes. Yeah.
But back in the day, it was all like grungy, like warehouse types. Like that's where the term box actually
gym.
came from. Yeah. No, but even yours is like. I mean, I opened in a racquetball court, but they were like in warehouse type spaces because it was cheap. The term box was literally we just need 4 walls. What percentage of affiliates do you think are starting to expand beyond that and into more retail boutique-ish spots?
33.6%.
That's what I thought it was. Yeah. I think I Googled it. It was on Wikipedia.
Yes.
But more so doing that.
It's challenging because it obviously depends on the area and what rent is going to be. So typically this is a rough shot, but typically rent in a shopping or like a strip mall like this would be somewhere to the tune of like 50 to 100% more expensive per square foot than you would get in something like flex space, like a warehouse.
For sure.
So if you're going to get $8 a square foot, you'd probably be looking at $12 to $15 a square foot in a kind of retail space like this.
Do you think...
And that's a general. Obviously, they can go significantly higher. Now, $25 to $30 a square foot.
Certainly much higher. Do you think, being in a nicer location per se, foot traffic driving past, boxes can make up for that difference?
I think visibility matters. And I think that the professionalism and the ease and, just, it's also where the supermarket is or it's right past where I'm going all the time. I think that all plays into it. But I don't think it's what will make or break it. I think if you're running a great gym, you can run it out of anywhere and do awesome. But I do think this adds another layer of shine to it if it's done well. If you run a great gym out of here, I think you kind of are running all the things together.
I think...
But there are pros and cons because it's harder, for example, to do runs out of a facility like this. I know because mine was also in a strip mall and it was a hybrid space where in the back we had big roll-up doors, but on the front it looked like this. And running because of traffic in the parking lots becomes much more challenging. And it's much more dangerous, so you're very limited on what you can do, or they just flat out don't
You
allow
gotta be
it.
quick. You
Frogger.
might have to tie your shoes. You might have to tie your shoes.
We almost got kicked out of our facility numerous times. We had to like go to bat with our
Well,
landlords because of that.
That's what I was going to say. Like, a lot of times landlords are like, oh, we can have a gym here. I'm like, no. CrossFit's very different. Bring them in for a class, drop weights, go to the neighbors, make sure the salon or the bank next door understands it's not the music, it's the pounding of the floors that's going to bother them.
And the parking lot. Like, think about a peak hour class changeover, right? Between like a 5:30 and a 6:30 class. Like, both are at capacity. So that means if, let's say, you're running a 15-person class and they're at capacity, it's 30 cars,
coaches,
changing,
right?
Let
Open
alone
gym
staff.
people, right?
It's bonkers.
Well, so I think obviously location is a thing. Being in visual line of sight is important, but contrary to that, I don't think not being in a space like this is as detrimental as it used to be, because it's not how people find things anymore.
No, I agree.
Where, like,
Yeah.
nobody's like looking around for stores typically. Like, they're like, I'm looking for a place. They pull out their phone, they Google it, and they can find it. That's why, like, our gym is kind of in the cut. Where our gym is, like, people don't have a problem finding us, but it's not something that you're just driving by every day.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think like jiu-jitsu is very similar to CrossFit. You Google it, you don't care where it is. Now, if it happens to be central to your life, that's helpful. But at the same time, you're willing to travel a little outside of your typical daily route to go to the right school or to the right gym.
For sure.
Watch this. Pay attention here.
Ooh, are
Pay
you going to go
attention.
topsy-turvy here?
Here's what I'm going to do. You recently had Lindsay London on.
Correct.
CrossFit Hampton Roads. She took over a gym. Mm-hmm. All of these are questions a lot of people should be asking prior to taking over the gym, but they don't.
Yeah, well,
See that? Wait. First, acknowledge what I just did.
I'm actually pretty proud of you right
Thank
now.
you.
Yeah.
I give it I don't know, I give it a 4
Out of 5.
out of 30.
These aren't iTunes reviews. This is out of 10. No,
By the way, if you're listening or watching this, leave us some.
Hey, we
which
talked
camera,
about this.
Nate? That camera?
Yeah.
That
Leave
one?
us.
No, that one.
This is an 8-camera shoot. 8-camera shoot.
Sorry.
Leave us a review. Leave us some feedback. Subscribe. Do all the things depending on where you're watching it. We appreciate it. The YouTube channel has been growing, and we're so thankful for it. But again, the feedback, we listen to it, reread it. These guys yell at me because I do a lot of the YouTube stuff. So
It's actually why we have him ask for feedback, so that we can get more ammunition to yell at him and criticize him
but you know what?
behind the scenes.
It's really fun.
Like Fern and I talk about, we grow from feedback. So please, if you're enjoying the show, drop something down there.
No, you're right. The questions that need to be asked, I learned this the hard way when I purchased a gym, whatever this was, 4 or 5 years ago. The ability to get in and out of the parking lot. So not just the parking lot, but what's called no left in, no left out, meaning I can't turn left to get in or to get out. Like, everything is a right turn, which requires a U-turn. Things like that are going to impact people's ability to actually show up and walk in the door matter, along with a whole host of other things. If you're going to be purchasing a gym, you got to find all the warts, you got to find all the dead bodies, you got to open the closet and what are all the problems involved with this. And a lot of us typically only, and this is what Lindsay and I talked about, we typically only look at the upside rather than what could go wrong or what's wrong with it.
Well, I think this is an opportune time. We've been getting more people who are transitioning into box ownership, taking over an existing space. So whether it is GMs who've been working at this box and have an opportunity to buy it, or it's a member who is stepping up and taking over the reins from a previous owner, or someone even coming in from the outside in just to acquire the box and pursue this thing. But we're getting more of those now than ever. And I'm finding it somewhat surprising how many are just going into it blindly, where the valuation is way off. They're not looking at any of the realities of what it really takes to grow this business, and it's not usually their fault. Let's be honest. More often than not, it's because the person who is selling the box doesn't have a good handle on their numbers, isn't running that great of a business, and struggling, which is why they're usually handing it off.
It's a two-party problem. It's both. It's both.
It's both. But I think that the people acquiring it often don't understand what they're getting themselves into, because we get people also who have just recently taken over and then are like, oh shit, I need some help. I thought this was going to be way easier than it actually was, and they try to do it on their own. But yeah, we've been getting a lot of people who've been reaching out who are in that process, either getting ready to or just did. And there's a lot of questions that I shoot back to them, and they're like, I don't know. I don't know what the revenue is. I don't know what the expenses are. I don't know what the actual membership number is. I don't know how, fill in the blank, anything is done. It's like, oh man.
Well, I'll shoot off the hip here. I'll pull a Jason Ackerman. I'll say something ridiculous. I'll say something ridiculous.
Absolutes too.
Yeah, absolutes. But bear with me here. Let's just say that your purchasing price let's just say you and I are going into agreement for purchasing an affiliate.
I'll pay you $1 million.
Right, perfect. I'll take it. Let's just say if it's under $250K for a brick and mortar, I would venture to say that business is probably not doing well.
If the owner is willing to part with it for $250
or less, there's probably things going on in there that need to be sorted out. And I think a lot of people will say, oh, well, it's worth this much money. That's good. And I think there should just be a little bit of a recalibration on that and be like, no, you're getting a steal on this, but you're not aware that you're getting a steal. You're thinking that this is a great deal and this thing is really cash flow heavy. Listen, from a financial standpoint, if you have a business that is cash flow heavy, you're not giving it up, or in most instances. And if you are, you're giving it up for big bucks. You're not giving it up for 50 to 60K. That is not a cash flow business. That's not a transaction that a financial advisor or somebody who does mergers and acquisitions to come in and be like, yes, you should do this. That's not happening. So I think just looking at that and then just calibrating how I look at this and say, okay, well, knowing that, what are the questions should I be asking in order to look at this through an objective lens rather than the romantic lens of like, oh, I love CrossFit. I've been here 5 years. I love all these people. I don't want to leave the community, and all of that starts to glaze over your eyes and you forget to ask some pretty simple questions.
Well, I mean, and what you just said at the end there is what we deal with the most. It's like, I love the community. The box owner's kind of burned out or he's stepping away. So I made him an offer.
Which is a red flag right out of the gate.
Right. And
why?
And I want to be clear on something you said. $250 does sound like a lot. But if the box is doing well, one of the pieces of advice I've given over the years is, hey, don't sell it. Hire someone full-time and make a few $1,000s a month doing nothing. Let the GM run it. If it's worth $250, they should be able to do that. So if they can't do that, that's a red flag, like you said, that it shouldn't be worth $250.
Well, and that's not to say that you shouldn't buy it, right? But it just frames my approach to when I buy it. Are like, okay, what are the things that I should be looking at? What are the likely problems that I'm going to have to be able to have to overcome when I take this over in order to get it where I need to go?
Mm-hmm. I lost my train of thought. Here's the thing, what you just said about the valuation, I would say 8 or 9 out of 10 of the boxes wouldn't even come close to that $250,000 threshold.
50K is probably the average sale. On average, if I was to be like what it is, between 50 to 75.
I had a conversation the other day with someone who was in the process of possibly buying their gym. And, it's a nicely built out facility, looks good. It's, they own the building, but that would be a separate second transaction if they also bought the building. But the gym produces, I want to say, I may be botching the numbers, but it was roughly they've got 65 members.
Okay.
And the business, and they're not all in agreements, nothing is run like a business. So this is not a well-run business. This is just a nice looking facility that the owners have done as a hobby business that they're now ready to get out of because it's been years of doing so. And they're just like, it's not worth the squeeze. It makes sense. I think they have other businesses that they own. But the business is not well set up. Now, think about it. The business is making less than $10,000 a month. It's like $6,000 to $7,000 in revenue per month. What would you think the asking price is? And the equipment when bought new was like $30,000 total.
The asking, what did this person want for it? Or
yes,
what do I think it is worth?
No, what do you think they should pay for it?
Oh, what do I think they should pay for it?
Sorry. First, what do you think they were asking?
Oh, I think they were asking probably north of 6 figures. What I think it's probably worth.
I got my number. It's in my pockets. I got my hands in my pockets.
I think it's worth $15,000 to $20,000.
Look at this. That's a 20.
Those are backwards, but that's okay.
It's a 2.
It's an 02.
Dave Kalina.
Yeah. No,
20K. I think I was going to say because assuming they're grossing 60, I assume the owner can take home about 20 in their first year.
Oh, I would bet they make $0 profit. It's literally losing $1,500.
Well, then you're just basing it off the equipment at that point. Depreciation.
Depreciated.
They were asking over $100,000 for this business.
No.
And the person,
for the record, we both got 2 out of 2.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
Moral of the story is that they were like, I think that's a good deal because I like the gym. And I'm like, I get the emotional piece because it's your people. And this is a place where you have all these positive memories and associations, but this is a terrible business deal. And, she's like, well, what if I paid less? And so we were kind of going back and forth, and I was like, well, depending on, I don't know all the details yet, but if you paid half of that, it's still a terrible deal.
$50K, you'd be overpaying pretty substantially for that.
Yes,
but
here was the story was like, I said, here's the thing. I said, you don't have you can still buy a business like this. When you're talking, the numbers are this low. We're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're talking the difference between a $40,000, $30,000, $50,000. Is that you could still buy it and make up for it and build a great business if you lean into this, and you won't remember the $10,000 or $20,000 difference. That's not the important part. But the $100,000,
you're never getting that back.
It's just too big of a spread. I bring this up only because they were still going to move forward with this deal. They're still really considering moving forward. And it's just concerning because it's like they don't know what they're selling and how to price it. They don't know what they're buying and what to look for. And this is what we find people getting themselves into, and they think they're buying a real business. I said, well, what are all the processes and the systems and the documentation and the staff? None of those things really exist. So what are you buying?
Well,
you're buying a lease.
You're buying
I said,
liability.
what's the lease? What's whatever.
And equipment.
Right.
You're buying a risk.
Literally, you're buying responsibility and risk.
Yeah. You're buying yourself a job.
Hard one because you have to fix their stuff.
A job you would get paid for. You're
you're
just buying a liability.
Right. So and I let me be clear, because I get the feeling that this may be received as like we're poo-pooing buying an affiliate. I am all for you buying an affiliate. I think that there's lots of great opportunities to get something where someone's already laid a foundation.
That same scenario could be a killer deal for you if you did it right.
Correct. And there's so many great opportunities out there because there's a lot of people who, did this just for fun and never made it a business, and they've got people there who care and people who want to be there and they're having fun, and this is a place where it's like, yes, this is my home base. I get it. I would buy one of those gyms if I had more time. But the reality is that you if you're going to do it right. Like now you have to do it really well. If you're going to go into something like this, it warrants it.
Oh, you're behind the A curve now. Behind the 8 ball.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
It's usually cheaper to start it from scratch than it is to buy it.
Well,
the difference is that you have advantages when you buy something existing because you can use that core base and that core cash flow to like really do something. But if you're going to do it, get in there and really get this thing humming quickly. Get the ROI for yourself and get this business healthy again so that you can do something with it, because otherwise you should just start it on your own.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. So if I buy one, I don't have to do all of the legwork to get it up and to get it existing, right? It has some revenue coming in the door. Where if I started from scratch, I have to go through this painful process of like, I got to get a lease, I got to buy the equipment, I got to do the floor layout, I got to figure out the systems. There's just a ton of questions that will get brought up if you start from scratch. Now, that's not to say that you can't go the, in air quotes, easier route, which is like I've got something that's quasi-built already and I can save myself some of that legwork. The problem is you don't know what you don't know in that scenario, and far more often than not, you will find out a lot of problems in that you are unaware of, and you skip that learning curve. You skip all of that part of like asking the questions of like, well, how would I do this? Right? Like, how would I set up my memberships? How would I set up holds and cancellations? What is the process for process? You just assume that all of those are done. In many instances, they're not. And that's where I think it's just understanding the game is really what we're kind of talking about. Not necessarily like you should, or it's a bad deal to buy one, or it's not a bad deal. It's just like, just educate yourself on the process and ask the questions, whether it's to another business owner. Like we help a lot of people. We've talked many people out of buying gyms, and then we've helped people buy gyms
all the time.
But it's one of those things where like, what I want them to do is I don't want you to go into this from a naive standpoint. I want you to know what you're getting into. And in some instances, it's going to be a real uphill battle. And I say, hey, listen, you're going to be in for a pretty serious 12-month ride. As long as you're good with that, then we can proceed, but we have to fix a lot of things in here. But we can turn this around pretty quickly. And one of the things, if just from the financials, let's just say that you did buy it for whatever, let's just say it was generating $7,000 a month. So let's call it $84,000 a year, but it was basically breaking even or losing money. Well, if I take out a loan to do that, just based on the loan in and of itself, I'm in the red. I got to pay back the loan. Mm-hmm. So without doing anything, just you purchasing puts you further behind the 8 ball. And now I'm like, okay, whatever that loan looks like, if it's over 5-year terms, typically what's what you get a business loan for. Okay, I got to generate $700 more a month just to make the loan payment. So now I've got lease liability, I've got loan liability now, and now I'm going to be beholden to 2 people. And if I'm going to default on either one of those, all that's going to get scooped up immediately. It's going to get taken from me.
Well, you're just going to have to rectify so many problems. A lot of people do that, thinking, "I'll come in, I'll adjust the rates, I'll get contracts going, I'll do all these things," and then it's like you take over, and you don't want the membership base to, lose their minds because you're coming in like, wait, all of a sudden you're increasing our rate $20 a month. You want contracts, you want to move the equipment, and you're like you said, you're so far behind that it takes a long time to catch up. You have to gain that good grace with your community before you make some of those changes that'll make your business profitable.
Good.
There's an order of operations to it, and that's the important thing that I think is often missed, is that it's not just go in and wing it. It's even more delicate when you're taking over an existing situation than when you're starting from zero. When you're starting from zero, you have to do more question answering because none of it's laid out for you yet.
And there's nobody to offend.
Right? And there's nobody to offend yet.
Yeah.
But when you're coming in, there's an additional layer there of not breaking up the good parts of it because you don't know better yet, which is often what happens, is that they get in there and they're like, oh, it's just this and this. And they're like, oh, I'll just raise the prices and I'll do this and all that. But the goodwill wasn't there. The trust wasn't there. And therefore, just those 2 things alone, simple things like a price raise or changing the class schedule, trimming things down, even just changing the times and keeping the same amount of classes, you could piss just enough people off to now completely blow the entire operation. And that is the point. There is a method to the madness. And just like when we work with someone who's opening, we start 3 months before they open their doors so that we can answer those questions for them so that when they open, they can just get to work and start growing their business.
That's on the short end, 3 months.
That is the short end.
Yeah.
That's assuming they have a spot and they're ready to go. Yeah.
Correct. That's like we're
prefer
rocking and
4
rolling.
to 6 so that you can spend the last 45 days just marketing and bringing people in.
Once the door's open, you're busy.
It's go time.
Yeah.
You're busy. You can't. That's when you're. If you do not have all of that stuff done prior to, like, saying go and opening up the doors, now you're very likely in a scenario where like many of those things will not get done.
Right,
and
because you're busy doing the thing.
And I don't mean like anytime recent or anytime soon. I mean
Probably
ever.
never.
Yeah.
You will never get to those things. You could be 3 years down the road and be like, oh man, I don't know why we haven't done that.
And that's why when you're acquiring a facility, you're acquiring a gym, it's like, I mean, I'm biased because this is what we do, but I don't see how I wouldn't do something like that without getting help to get it right. Because once you understand what's at stake, like, you can blow it on the most important parts, which is that trust and goodwill aspect of it, and you raise the price too early or by too much, or you make some of these shifts that you create an exodus. Because all they're doing when you come in to take over, they want to put you in one of 2 categories. That's either going to be, see, I knew she would screw it up, or thank goodness our hero is here. You're going to be one of those 2. That's it. So you pick which one you want to be. You want to be the hero who comes in and actually says, I bought this thing because I think I can do it better and I want to make this thing as good as I know it can be. Well, how are you going to do that? You're just going to guess and wing it, or do you want to get it right?
And I think that's just asking questions, right? So I was trying to think of an analogy earlier, and so I'll just ask you. I said, you get haircuts, right?
Every so often.
Are you just going to go buy a hair salon? You're just like, oh, I think this is a good investment. I think I'll do this because I like the people in the barbershop and I like the guy who cuts my hair.
Yeah, that's a good point. Right? There's so many things in life that we have an allegiance to that we would never consider buying.
Right. It's irrational.
Yeah.
And that's my point, is just like, if you think about that, because just because you work out doesn't know that you know how to run this thing. Just because you get haircuts. Marcus doesn't get haircuts, but just because you get haircuts.
Right, or you go to that same
Still
restaurant.
technically a haircut.
You go to the same restaurant in Virginia Beach all the time.
Right.
You support it.
Oh, I'll buy a restaurant. It's
Yeah.
fine. And I'll be like, oh, I really like it here. The spaghetti's good, so I'll pay $250,000. And I'm like, no, you would ask a whole horde of questions about all the liability. Who runs this place? How does all of this work? How do I maintain the kitchen?
How'd you develop the price of that spaghetti?
Right.
Right.
Where did you even come up with the menu? Do we have to change that ever? Like, all of those things and all the questions need to be asked, and they need to be asked on the forefront. And newsflash, it's going to be uncomfortable. Like it's an uncomfortable process. If you've talked to anybody that's gone through a success, and these are successful acquisitions for like big companies, they're like, it's painful. It's exhausting.
It takes months, if not years, for some of those bigger purchases.
It almost falls through many, many times, but they go through like a pretty extreme vetting. And we're talking about something that would require a fraction of that, but would still require months of discussion about, hey, I need to see tax returns. Like, can I see all of the reports from either Wodify or Zen Planner or whatever it might be? Can you tell me like who's responsible for what in the gym? And the likelihood is you probably won't get answers to many of those things, which begs the question, how did you come up with that number?
Dude, box owners don't want to share their tax returns and stuff, and then it's like, and
they
as
don't
soon
want
as
to
that
share
happens,
the stuff
it's like,
until
okay,
the deal is done.
Then it's like, no, then this is.
Well, that's my point, though, is like because of the nature of it, often they don't want to show their cards, or they're not comfortable sharing that information or giving that, and or they don't have it, and they have to go do a lot of work only to be disappointed themselves, and then their valuation goes down. There's a whole host of reasons why.
Right.
But the point is that that's that much more reason to get help, what questions to ask, because this is part of the process. I have 2 or 3 people that I'm working with right now that are in the process of signing up with us, where I've been helping guide them in the process so that we can help them long term. This is a long-term play. You're not doing this and it's like, I'll just do this for a year or two. At least I hope not. But this is a business. This is you're investing a good amount of money into something that is going to take up a considerable amount of time and energy. Like, let's do it right. And let's do it right, not just for you as a business owner. Do it right because the coaches deserve it. Do it right because your freaking community deserves it. Build a great business. Run a great business, because that's going to be one that you want to keep.
There's an extra layer of complexity when I purchase somebody else's gym or whatever business that might be. So let's say you do all of your due diligence. The extra layer of complexity is there. Now there's the whatever the time frame is, and this could vary widely, to make it mine. Now I have to go through and I have to do whatever that culture change is, or the staff changes, the personnel of like that stuff in and of itself can take months, if not potentially a year or longer. This is before we talk about all of like the strategic, X's and O's, ones and zeros stuff. Like that stuff takes a long time by itself. But now I have this added complexity of like, do we all get along? Like, what's going on with the member base? Are they happy? Like, how do we rectify all of these issues? Like, that in and of itself is like this crazy ball of yarn trying to untangle. It can be a real headache if you're not prepared for it. If you are prepared for it, you can go into that and you can systematically start chipping away at that and start to kind of like craft your own.
That's where we start.
Yeah, you start to craft your own culture and fix some of those things piece by piece so that it's not stressful for you or the member base. Because the win-win scenario is like, okay, I chip away at this at a very strategic way. It's like order of operations, step 1, step 2, and the members for the most part are almost solely in the bucket of like, this is going well. This is a pleasant change for me as I work through. It's seamless
and the
and
coaches.
It's painless. And
Let's
the coaches.
not forget it. The coaches are remember, there's 3 stakeholders that need to be satisfied in this equation. You have the owner, you have the coaches, and you have the members. If all 3 are not satisfied, you've got an imbalanced like tripod. Like, think of it like the stool. It's going to fall over. It will not stay. And oftentimes people just think about the owner, they just think about the members, but the team, like, what about the coaches and the team? You got to make sure that they're bought in, that they trust you, that you have the buy-in from them also. Because if not, if they leave, this is even worse. Oh, hey, by the way, you're going to be coaching 8 classes a day by yourself.
You have no manpower.
Right. And your members are, following their favorite coach out the door. But it's also that. Like little things. You show up and you're like, okay, I buy this box here. I don't like yellow. Right? Then you change the colors, and your members are like, we love the yellow. This is citrine. Like, what's going on? Like, you have to really think about every little detail. Chuck Carswell says this at the end of every level, too. He's, you just learned a lot this weekend. Don't go back to the box and try to implement it all tomorrow. You got to do these small changes. You know how it is. You move the rowers from one side of the room to the other, and your members are up in arms.
What is going on?
Yeah, what is happening? The rowers are not where they typically are. You got to be smart and deliberate in these changes.
I think there's I used to work with this chief in the Navy. His name was Charles Smith, and he had this kind of
Charles.
Yeah, shout out Charles.
Charlie.
He was fantastic. He would give this speech to all the new guys that would come in and work in the division, and he would be like, "Hey, you're on the 90-day rule. That just means you look, listen, and you learn, but most importantly, you shut the fuck up."
Yeah.
And that's what he'd tell everybody.
Katie, you're on the 90-day rule still.
Ouch.
But this is, you can think about this as like you can kind of go through a lot of that process prior to like signing on the dotted line, which is like go spend some time in the affiliate. Like go sit in the classes, hang out in there. You'll start to see the way things move and the way things work. You'll come up with a lot of questions, and then you may even transition that over into post-acquisition before you decide to make any really significant changes. But if I've done my due diligence before that, you'll probably know what those need to be. And you'll have a plan to roll them out smoothly. If it is a price change, how do I kind of get ahead on that and get some sort of equity with the member base to kind of like not to be okay with it? Or if I'm going to make some changes in something silly like the programming, like what is going to be the fallout from doing something like? Listen, I think it's ridiculous that there would be a fallout, but it doesn't actually matter what I think.
It's not the point.
It's not the point. It happens if you go in there like, oh, this programming is stupid, and then you lose 10 members. I'm like, was it worth it? Was it worth it for you to be right so that you could do that special programming to lose, whatever that would come out to, roughly $20,000 a year in revenue?
Look, you can't skip I need to understand what's even happening in here, which remember, as a member, and this is the part I think that is missed also. Just because you're a member at a box does not mean you understand how the business works and or the mechanics of it, right? Good or bad.
Right.
You don't understand the mechanics of the business yet. So first, it's not you're like, oh, well, I would just change the programming, do this, do that. Sure, right? But as gym owners, and for those of you listening who are gym owners, you ever had a member tell you something and you're like, thanks, but we're not doing that.
That's dumb.
Right? Because that doesn't work for what we're trying to do here. Not because I don't want your input. It's just not the right idea. Well, oftentimes it's the same thing is true until you understand the mechanics of how the business works. So first step is learn how the business works. So watch, learn about the numbers, watch the classes, and do that due diligence phase. Then it's get a hold of it. Can I even take over the reins and keep it going as it is before you just start changing shit? Make sure you're actually able to handle it as it is.
Yeah, can you drive it exactly the way it works without making any changes?
You can already know, like, oh, I'm going to need to change that. Great, and you'll get right to that. But can you even drive this thing? And once you're able to drive it, then systematically you're building that rapport and that trust and making sure that people are bought into you and you're positioning yourself as the hero. Because you are systematically doing things that are improving it for them without doing the things that are taking away from or changing things on them that are going to scare them away and put you into the villain category, right? We want to be in the hero category. And so that process, this is what we're talking about here, is understanding that order of operations and doing it accordingly. It will make everything to follow infinitely easier and actually faster. That slower part at first, it's the measure twice so you can cut once when you get there. This is the key, because it's not just take it over and start chopping things and doing this. It might feel really good. You may not die in the process, but you are making it unnecessarily challenging for yourself, your team, and your members. When instead, follow the order of operations and then be systematic about it. 1 year from now, you will be light years ahead of where you would have been if you would have just come in and started swinging the axe around. And everyone will be thankful for it. Your members will be thankful for it because you're the hero. Same thing will your coaches, and so will your bottom line. You as the owner will be stoked because you're like, oh, cool, I'm actually getting to where I was intending to go by buying this business.
And I think what you just outlined there is patience. So correct me if I'm wrong, because we've all talked to many people that do this. Most of the time when I'm having this conversation, that timeline between we decided we were going to talk about buying the box and then I bought it is way too short. I mean, it's so short. I'm like, you didn't even have time if you had the wherewithal to do the due diligence. Like, how could you possibly have combed through all of that?
Well, usually it looks like, well, the owner wants out, so I had to do it real quick.
Right. And that is the nature more often than not.
I'm sure he did want money.
Yeah. I'm sure he was burned out and wanted to be done coaching.
Which is fine. But again, these are all kind of like red flags, and that's really what we're trying to expose here. It's just like, it's not that you shouldn't do it, but it's like, are you recognizing the red flags? Are you being educated and strategic about it in nature so that when you do get your hands on it, A, I took my time to know what I was getting into, and then B, I've identified what the plan is moving forward, and then C, I've really, really analyzed, like, based on all of the factors involved here, with that plan, how long should that plan be? Should I expand it? Can I compress it? How many of these things are going to be dire in nature, meaning like it's in the red. We have to raise prices right now. Otherwise, this thing is going to fold and I'm going to lose everything. Or, hey, I'll wait 6 to 9 months to do this because I've got some plans. We're going to slap a coat of paint on the walls. We're going to do a couple of things here. The members are going to walk in. They're going to be pumped. And now I can start to get that equity within the member base to then roll that out in 9 months. And then everybody will not only not complain about it, they'll be fully supportive of it, which is the
100%.
goal, right? Which is like, you don't have to make it unnecessarily hard. You know, you can make it easy, but it does require a level of patience that most of us are not either prepared for or willing to do, at which point I have questions, maybe this isn't for you.
Well, or you just don't know how to play the game yet. And this is part of what, I mean, so many of our affiliate owners need to learn as we start working with them, is that understanding the time horizons are usually further than you think, but it gets you better results faster. Think about training. It's like you want to do the double days, you want to do all this extreme shit so that you make more progress in 6 months, where it's like, well, actually, if we did this over the course of a year and a half, you get to do this forever. Right, you will be fitter.
and you're gonna
Fast
enjoy
is
it.
relative, right? So I think that's where you're going. So it's like we think of fast as like 6 months, and I'm like, well, fast in the business world would be like 24 to 36 months to take something and like turn it around and like really crush it. I mean, if you look at any business that had like a really sharp takeoff, like there was a lead up to that. There was probably 24 to 36 months, and that is fast. In other instances, it might take 5 years to make some sort of change like that. And I think reframing like what fast is in the business world is not what we think of fast in the gym. Fast in the gym is like minutes. We're talking years in a lot of these instances. And if that's not something you're prepared for or you're not sure how to do, well, this is where you go ask for help and be like, hey, what's a reasonable timeline for something like this? And they might say, 2 years. 2 years is reasonable to do it right, to not create more problems so that you backtrack and that thing that could have taken you 2 now takes you 4, or you don't get there at all.
Think in the last year, how many affiliates have you worked with that have now gone through the process where you help them from the beginning of their acquisition, or at least very early on, to now like a year later? You're able to cover a ton of ground, and if you do that first year right,
so much.
You're actually covering what takes 2-3 years, because this business is small enough, it's simple enough where if you do the right things in the right order, you can cover a lot more ground. But the point is that don't try to do it in the first 3 months. Understand that even if we spread out over 12 or 18 months, that is a really short timeline to buy something that's broken and turn it into something that's let alone fit.
Right.
Yeah,
right?
and you're not suggesting they're not making money in that time.
No.
They're-
We go for
they're
low-hanging fruit right away.
They're still
Like, how do we make
earning
this
a good
viable?
income, growing that income. You're talking a year, 2 years in. They have a thriving, successful affiliate.
Right. You take gyms. I mean, you give me specific examples. You guys are the ones
I mean,
working
look at
with
Lindsay with Hampton Roads that we just had on.
I'm thinking Lindsay, just because we were literally there last week, but I'm trying to, like, off the top of my head now, I'm blanking for whatever
You got
reason.
Trish. She took over. She
took over.
I mean, she's put it out there. I mean,
Louie.
Trish is going to gross over $500K for the gym. I don't know if she wants to.
Louie
share
just
that.
took
It's
his.
too late.
Louie, he just told me he took his. He got full ownership of the business and took his largest paycheck ever.
I'll give you another one, Apache Mike in
That's
Jersey,
right. He bought his partner out.
Bought his partner out. And all of a sudden, it's buying out your partner is really similar in this situation because you couldn't make some of these decisions on your own, and now you can change that culture, or your partner was kind of dragging it down, not putting in the work, so maybe you decided I didn't want to do it either. But like Mike buys his partner out, skyrockets the business because now he's working harder, he's more bought in, and the members feel it.
But we made small incremental changes, right? Just like, hey, we changed a little bit of the sales process, and he starts closing at like a 200% better rate than he was before, just because simply talking about what's that communication look like, adding different layers to that membership option. He's like, oh, I've sold 4 paid in fulls. I haven't sold 4 ever. He sells 4 in 1 month, right? Appropriately priced, by the way. But all of these, and I think the key thing here is like that plan, right? So because most gym owners, like whether they purchased or whether they're just doing it kind of like blindly, is having a plan that allows me to be kind of projecting forward versus reacting to the things that walk into my door every day is the difference between night and day, right? Like that is the difference between somebody who's like making forward progress, building a business, building a team, and somebody's just like, I can't figure this out. I'm like, well, because you're never literally getting past today. You live in today and only today. I want you to be thinking 30, 60, 90, 12, 24, 36 months out, what does that look like? Because if we can map that out, we can be thoughtful about some of the changes and be like, hey, listen, you don't need to do anything crazy with the prices right now. But if you make a slight tweak here over the next 24 months, that yields $40,000 in revenue additional annually, enough to either give yourself a bonus, hire a full-time coach, whatever it might be. But you have to have that plan. You can't just be like, oh, I think this is going to go well. And then you walk in there and it's just like fire drill every single day, extinguisher blowing into people's faces. Like, it's just a complete shit show, because you're never actually able to get your head out of the weeds and look up and be like, what needs to be done? And that's a lot of what our job is in that process, is like, hey, I'm going to give you a set of tasks. I've got this laid out for you. Here's the map. Occasionally we'll look at it together, but right now here's the task that I need you to do. These will solve both short-term, medium, and long-term. Some of those long-term problems you won't see for another 6 to 12 months, but we're fixing them now, so we don't have to deal with them later.
We have another one, Anna Floyd in the Keys, Florida Keys. Mm-hmm. She took over, and she was really skeptical about a lot of these changes, because she's like, no, the owner thinks this and this and this. I'm like, here's the deal. That owner failed. That's why you bought the business. She made these little changes. She's getting ready to quit her full-time job that she thought she'd have to keep while running the affiliate, from little small changes. But just like you suggested, it was small, little, impactful changes over time. And over time, I'm talking 3-4 months. And like you said, Marcus, throughout, it's because she understood the culture there. She did the work beforehand, so she was able to increase the rates, add contracts, add hold policies, etc., that were never implemented. And that's a big mistake. We take over, and we're like, well, I don't want to do these things because the other owner didn't. And it's like, well, the other owner failed.
I'm trying to think. So Jeremiah, Daniel, but these are all the ones who are like, within about 12 months. Actually, Jeremiah was way faster. He wanted to be out of his job because he started with us in January. I think he wanted to be out by like June. He was out in March.
Yeah, number of
because we just made some of those changes, and we mapped it out, and I said, okay, if we make some of these changes, we'll do a price increase here. We'll run some kind of organic lead nurture stuff here to kind of increase the membership base. And all of a sudden he's like, oh, I can leave right now. And I'm like, let's go, because this only gets faster once you're there full time, But if we execute just a little bit of thoughtfulness and a little bit of patience, now we can go fast, right? So it's the whole adage is like go slow to go fast. And most people just want to go fast right out of the gate, no different than training.
Right. And what's the opportunity cost? You can wing it. And again, you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know what to look for. You don't know where the low-hanging fruit is to make those adjustments that are not going to disrupt everything, but allow you to increase cash flow, sort out whatever culture issues need to be sorted out, which are at the root of probably most of the things. What are the highest value, lowest friction systems that I can put in place to make it easier for my staff and for myself? And put me on a trajectory. The opportunity cost is brutal if you just wing it and go in and guess and leave all that on the table. That's my argument.
And if you were to go in on a micro level, so substitute purchasing a gym for starting a program, and you could apply the same logic to the whole thing, which is like, I'm just going to start a nutrition program. And it's like, boom, 2 weeks later, and I'm like, that's not going to work out. How about we take some time to thoughtfully put this together, think of all the hiccups that might happen. What's the problem? How are we going to create the long tail for this? Like, who's going to do all of this legwork? How do we over deliver on this? And you're like, oh, well, now I'm not stressed about rolling this thing out. We've been planning it for 9 months. If it's, running a strength cycle, if you're going to do that for your members, a nutrition program, if you're going to run a boot camp or something like that.
Everything.
Everything, right?
It applies everywhere.
Just put the appropriate amount of thought into it. You'll be much happier. And I would argue that from an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's probably one of the most undervalued skills that you could learn to develop is like patience. Like, don't go too soon. You're just going to step all over your own toes, and it's going to be a nightmare.
If you enjoyed this episode, here's what, were you going to say something?
Well, not anymore. Go ahead.
I'll take it.
You screwed it up in the beginning, so screw it up on the end for us.
If you're watching this on YouTube, here's what I need you to do. I need you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment below. If you're listening to this on any of the podcast platforms, head over to YouTube and watch. We do these things live, in person.
In real life, IRL. Best hour, IRL.
New playlist. And if you are listening on any podcast platform, please leave us a review there as well. Take it away, Fern.
Listen, if you guys are thinking about purchasing a gym, remember there's a couple things you want to take into account. Ask the right questions, exercise a little patience, and really, really just seek out some help if you're going to do that. But it's better to take the time to do it right than fire yourself out of the cannon a little too quickly. So
Agreed.
yeah. If you guys have any other questions, don't ask him. Don't ask him.
Just ask this guy.
Ask young Katie. All right. We'll see you guys next time. We appreciate you choosing to have us help you in your passion for coaching and affiliate ownership. If you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to us on any social media platforms, or you can visit www.besthouroftheirday.com to book a call. If you found this episode helpful for you, please share it so that we can help other coaches and affiliate owners to help build a bigger and stronger CrossFit community.